My name is Hassan. 3 years ago, if anyone had told me I would one day speak publicly about Jesus Christ, I would have laughed in anger and walked away. I was born into a strict Muslim home in northern Nigeria. My father was respected in our community, and from childhood I was taught discipline, prayer, and obedience to Islam. Religion was not just part of our lives, it was our identity. But today I speak because of my son.
Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and your mother, for this is the first commandment with promise, that you may live long on earth. This is what Jesus told this boy, a 9-year-old boy, who went with his father to the Kaaba, a Kaaba in Mecca. He saw Jesus above the Kaaba. Jesus told him exactly what he tell his father. He said he should tell his father this verse, and he told his father. But his father did not believe. His father did not believe him. He also said, let the young children come to me, and do not try to stop them. But his father did not believe. He thought it was fake. Until one day, Jesus revealed himself, because he was asking Jesus to reveal himself to him. But Jesus did not just reveal himself to him. He revealed himself through a beggar who was begging along the road. And this beggar gifted him a Bible. He did not know this is Jesus. This is what Jesus was planning for him. When he went home, he read the Bible and reviewed the verse. The exact verse that Jesus told his son. But after reading the verse, he now went to the street, to the city. This city, there was a lot of crisis. Children did not obey their parents, and children did not come to God. He now went there and preached exactly what Jesus said he should preach. After preaching, he now came to God. He drew nearer to God, and his life changed. After suffering for over how many years? He suffered for 3 years. His wife was dead, nothing. His finances wasn't moving again. But until this day, after Jesus revealed himself and everything, he now came back financially. He was financially stable. So amazing viewers from around the world, as you are listening to this testimony today, don't forget that God can do whatsoever you ask him to do. Just have faith in him, have hope in him, and one day he will come true for you.
I was taught discipline, prayer, and obedience to Islam. Religion was not just part of our lives, it was our identity. But today I speak because of my son. Everything changed because of what a 9-year-old boy saw above the Kaaba. Even now, as I tell this story, my hands still shake remembering that day. My wife, Amina, died 3 years ago during childbirth complications. The doctors tried everything, but we were too poor to afford proper treatment. I still remember the cold hospital hallway, the smell of medicine, and the silence that followed after the nurse looked at me with pity in her eyes. She is gone, she whispered. I felt my world collapse. After her death, life became dark for me and my son, Yusuf. He was only 6 years old then, too young to understand why his mother stopped answering him when he called her name. At night, I would hear him crying softly on his mat. Baba, why did Allah take Mama? I never knew how to answer him. I worked small jobs in the market carrying heavy bags for traders just to survive. Some days we ate only once. Sometimes our neighbors helped us with rice or bread. Other times we drank water and slept hungry. Still, I held tightly to my faith. I believed maybe Allah was testing me. Every morning before sunrise, I woke Yusuf for prayers. Come, my son, I would say gently. A man must learn to pray even when life is painful. He was obedient, quiet, different from many children his age. He loved asking deep questions that often made adults uncomfortable. One evening, while we sat outside our small apartment watching children play football in the dusty street, Yusuf suddenly asked me something strange. Baba, does God still speak to people? I frowned at him. What kind of question is that? He looked down nervously. In school, they said prophets heard from God before. But does he still speak now? I sighed heavily. God speaks through his word and through the teachings we already have. Don't fill your head with strange thoughts. He nodded quietly, but I noticed he kept staring at the sky. A few weeks later, during the season of pilgrimage, an opportunity came unexpectedly. One wealthy man from our mosque decided to sponsor a small group of men and their children to visit Mecca. I had never traveled outside Nigeria before. When my name was chosen, I fell to the ground in gratitude. For the first time in years, I felt hope. Yusuf was excited beyond words. Baba, we are really going to see the Kaaba? Yes, I smiled. Allah has finally remembered us. The journey felt unreal. The bright lights, the enormous crowds, the sound of prayers filling the air day and night. It overwhelmed us both. Yusuf held my hand tightly almost everywhere we went. The first time we stood before the Kaaba, tears rolled down my face. It was more beautiful than anything I had imagined. Thousands of people moved together in worship. Some cried openly. Others raised their hands toward heaven. Yusuf stared silently. That evening, we joined the congregation for prayer near the Kaaba courtyard. The air was warm, and the sky glowed orange as the sun began to set. I remember every detail clearly because that was the moment my life began to change. As we bowed in prayer, Yusuf suddenly grabbed my sleeve tightly. "Baba!" I ignored him at first, trying to focus. But then he pulled harder. "Baba, look!" Annoyed, I turned toward him slightly. His face had gone pale. His eyes were fixed on the sky above the Kaaba. At first, I thought he was frightened by something in the crowd. But then I noticed tears running down his cheeks. "What is wrong with you?" I whispered harshly. He pointed upward with trembling fingers. And then he said words I will never forget for the rest of my life. "Baba, there is a man in the sky." Fear rushed through me immediately. "Be quiet," I warned. But Yusuf kept staring upward as though he could see something invisible to everyone else. "He is shining," he whispered. "His clothes are white." I grabbed his arm firmly. "Enough." But then Yusuf spoke again, his voice shaking. He said, "Let the young children come to me and do not try to stop them." My heart began pounding violently inside my chest. I looked around quickly, terrified someone nearby would hear him. "What are you saying?" I whispered angrily. But Yusuf continued as though he was listening to someone speaking directly to him. He said, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother." I froze completely. Those were not verses I had ever taught him. In fact, I had never even heard those words before. Yusuf suddenly started crying harder. He said the children of this generation are turning away. He said many children no longer know God. He said I should tell the children of the world to come back before darkness covers them. At that point I became frightened beyond explanation. I pulled him close immediately and covered his mouth. "Stop talking." People nearby had started glancing toward us. Yusuf looked confused and afraid. "But Baba, enough," I snapped. The rest of that night, I could barely sleep. Yusuf remained unusually quiet beside me in our room. Every now and then he would stare at me as if wanting to speak again. Finally, close to midnight, he whispered softly into the darkness, "Baba." The man said his name is Jesus. The room suddenly felt cold. And for the first time in my life, I felt afraid to pray. That night in Mecca became the beginning of a battle inside my soul. After Yusuf whispered the name Jesus, I could not sleep again. I lay awake on the thin mattress staring at the ceiling while the sound of distant prayers echoed outside the building. Beside me, Yusuf slept peacefully as if nothing unusual had happened. But my mind was burning. I kept replaying his words over and over. "Let the young children come to me. Children, obey your parents. The children of this generation are turning away." How could a 9-year-old boy speak words he had never been taught? And why did those words disturb me so deeply? The next morning, I tried convincing myself it was only imagination. Maybe the heat, the crowd, and emotions overwhelmed him. Children sometimes say strange things. That was what I wanted to believe. But something inside me would not rest. As we walked through the streets of Mecca that morning, Yusuf remained unusually calm. He looked around quietly while pilgrims rushed past us in white garments. Finally, I stopped him near a small shop. "Tell me exactly what happened yesterday." He looked up at me nervously. "Will you be angry?" I took a deep breath. "No, just tell me." Yusuf hesitated before speaking. "When we were praying, I saw light above the Kaaba. At first I thought it was the sun. But then the light became brighter and I saw a man standing inside it. My chest tightened. "What kind of man?" "He had kind eyes," Yusuf said softly. "And he stretched out his hands like he wanted to help people." I looked away immediately. "And then, he called me." "What do you mean he called you?" "He looked at me, Baba, like he knew me already." His voice trembled slightly. "He said children are becoming lost because the world is teaching them bad things. He said many parents no longer guide their children toward God." As he spoke, memories began entering my mind painfully. Children insulting elders openly. Boys addicted to drugs before turning 15. Girls disappearing into dangerous lifestyles. Young people spending all day on phones, violence, and immorality. Even in our own community, respect and discipline had started disappearing. I had complained about these things many times myself, but hearing them now through the mouth of my son frightened me. What else did he say? I asked quietly. Yusuf looked down at his feet. He said I should not be afraid. My heart skipped. He said he sees our suffering since Mama died. I froze completely. For a moment, I could not breathe. I had never discussed my private pain deeply with Yusuf. I tried always to appear strong for him, but now tears formed in my eyes unexpectedly. He said you carry too much sadness in your heart, Yusuf continued softly, and he wants to bring light back into our home. I immediately stood up and walked away from him. I could not handle those words. How could a child know the hidden pain inside me? That evening I became angry not at Yusuf but at myself for even listening seriously. I decided we would speak no more about it. Do you hear me? I told him firmly back in our room. Forget everything you saw. But Baba, I said forget it. Yusuf lowered his head quietly. Yes, Baba. But even after saying those words, peace did not return to me. Instead, the voice of my son echoed louder in my thoughts. The remaining days in Mecca became difficult. Everywhere I looked at the Kaaba, I remembered what Yusuf claimed to have seen above it. And strangely, I found myself secretly looking at the sky. When we finally returned to Nigeria, I thought normal life would help me forget everything. But home felt different now. Very different. One afternoon, after prayers at the mosque, I sat outside watching children from our neighborhood. What I saw disturbed me deeply. A group of boys no older than 12 were smoking behind a shop. Another child cursed loudly at his own mother in public. Teenagers fought violently in the street while adults ignored them. That night, Yusuf sat beside me quietly while I stared outside. Baba. Yes. The things Jesus said are true. I looked at him sharply. I told you not to speak about that again. But look around, he said gently. Children are changing. His words pierced me because I knew he was right. Days passed, then weeks. Still, I could not escape the memory. One afternoon at the market, I met an old friend named David. We had grown up together before life separated us. Unlike me, he had become a Christian years earlier. I almost avoided him, but he greeted me warmly. Hassan, it has been too long. We sat together under a shade beside the busy road. After speaking for some time, he noticed something was wrong with me. You look troubled. I forced a smile. Life. But David kept watching me carefully. Finally, before I could stop myself, I asked him a question. Have you ever heard these words before? Let the little children come to me and do not stop them? His eyes widened immediately. Yes. My heart began pounding. Where is it from? The Bible, he answered slowly. I looked away quickly, uncomfortable. And what about, children obey your parents in the Lord? David stared at me now with serious attention. That is also from the Bible. A strange silence fell between us. Then he asked quietly, why are you asking? For several seconds I said nothing. Finally, I told him everything. Mecca, the vision, the voice, the words Yusuf spoke. As I talked, David remained silent, listening carefully without mocking me. When I finished, he leaned back slowly. Hassan, do you know something powerful? What? Those words came directly from Jesus himself. A chill moved through my body. David opened a small Bible from his bag and turned pages carefully. He showed me the verses. I stared at the text silently. For some reason, seeing those exact words written there shook me deeply. Yusuf had spoken them exactly without ever reading the Bible in his life. David's voice became softer. Jesus loves children very deeply. He warned that the world would become darker and pull many away from God. I swallowed hard. But why would Jesus speak to my son? David looked at me carefully before answering. Sometimes God reaches people through the purest hearts. That sentence stayed inside me long after we parted ways. That night, I sat alone in our small apartment while Yusuf slept. The electricity had gone out again, leaving only darkness and silence. I stared at the ceiling thinking about everything. Then suddenly, from outside our window, I heard children shouting vulgar songs in the street late into the night. Drunken men argued nearby. Music blasted from a distant bar. And for the first time, I began wondering if heaven truly was trying to warn us. I closed my eyes heavily. God, I whispered into the darkness. But this time, I did not know who I was speaking to anymore. After my conversation with David, something inside me began changing slowly. I tried to resist it at first. Every day I told myself to forget everything connected to Jesus. I buried myself in work at the market, carrying heavy goods under the burning Nigerian sun until my back ached from exhaustion. But no matter how hard I worked, my mind kept returning to the same questions. Why would my son know Bible verses he had never read? Why did those words feel alive inside my heart? And why did I suddenly feel empty every time I prayed the way I always had before? One evening, Yusuf and I sat outside our apartment eating rice from the same bowl. The electricity was gone again, and the streetlights barely worked. Darkness covered most of the neighborhood except for small lanterns glowing through windows. Yusuf looked up at me quietly. Baba. Yes. Are you angry with Jesus? The spoon stopped halfway to my mouth. I stared at him. Why would you ask that? Because every time I mention him, you become sad. I looked away immediately. Children notice things adults try to hide. I am not sad, I replied weakly. But Yusuf simply nodded slowly as if he knew I was lying. Then he said something that shook me deeply. When Jesus spoke to me, I felt peace. I remained silent. Peace. That was the one thing missing from my life since Amina died. At night, I still remembered her voice. Sometimes I reached across the bed unconsciously expecting her to be there. Other times I woke from sleep hearing her laughter in my dreams. Grief had become like a shadow following me everywhere. And despite all my prayers over the years, the heaviness never truly left. But now, after hearing about Jesus from my own son, something strange had started happening. Hope, small, weak, confusing, but real. A few days later, I searched for David again. We met at a small tea stand near the market road. Cars passed loudly while traders shouted prices nearby. David looked surprised to see me. I was wondering if you would come back. I sat down quietly. I have questions. He smiled gently. Ask. For hours I questioned him about Jesus. Who was he really? Why did Christians call him the Son of God? Why did he care so much about children? Why did he speak about love and forgiveness constantly? David answered patiently from the Bible. Some things were difficult for me to understand. Other things strangely touched my heart deeply. Then he read one verse aloud slowly. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. I felt something inside me crack. Weary, burdened. That was exactly how I had lived for years. David noticed tears forming in my eyes. Hassan, Jesus sees suffering differently. He does not run from broken people. He draws near to them. I wiped my face quickly, embarrassed. That night, I could not stop thinking about those words. The next morning, I left home early for work. Business was terrible that day. I earned almost nothing. By afternoon, hunger and frustration filled me. As I walked through the crowded streets carrying an empty sack over my shoulder, I suddenly heard a weak voice behind me. Sir, please help me. I turned and saw an old beggar sitting beside the roadside wall. His clothes were torn badly. Dust covered his feet. One eye looked cloudy with blindness. Normally I would have kept walking. I barely had enough money for myself and Yusuf. But something stopped me. I reached into my pocket and handed him the little bread I had bought for lunch. The old man looked at me strangely. May God reward you, he whispered. I nodded and started walking away. Then he spoke again. You are carrying pain in your heart. I froze. Slowly, I turned back toward him. What did you say? The old beggar reached into a dirty bag beside him and pulled out an old worn Bible. I believe this belongs to you. Immediately, fear and confusion hit me. No, I said quickly. I cannot take that. But the man stretched it toward me firmly. He told me someone would come today. My heart began pounding violently. Who told you? The old man smiled faintly. The one who changes lives. A strange silence filled the air between us. Cars moved. People shouted nearby. Yet somehow everything around me felt distant. I stared at the Bible in his hand. Then, before I could explain why, I slowly took it. The old man's eyes became emotional. Do not ignore his voice, he whispered. I opened my mouth to ask more questions. But suddenly another trader called my name from across the street. I turned for only a second. When I looked back, the beggar was gone. Completely gone. I searched around in confusion. There was nowhere he could have disappeared to that quickly. Goosebumps covered my skin. That evening, I hid the Bible carefully under my mattress before Yusuf could see it. Fear still controlled me. In my community, even touching a Bible as a Muslim man could bring judgment and anger. But later that night, curiosity overcame me. I removed the Bible slowly and opened it. The pages looked old and worn. At first I did not know where to begin. Then my eyes landed on a verse underlined in faded ink. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. I read it again and again. For some reason, every word felt personal. As the nights passed, I secretly continued reading. The more I read about Jesus, the more confused I became. This was not the image of Christianity I had heard growing up. Jesus spoke with authority, but also compassion. He touched the poor. He defended the weak. He healed the broken. And everywhere he went, children ran toward him without fear. One night, while reading by lantern light, Yusuf woke up unexpectedly. His eyes widened when he saw the Bible in my hands. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then slowly he smiled. Not a mocking smile, peaceful one. He found you too, he whispered. My throat tightened instantly. Yusuf. But my son interrupted softly. Baba, I told you he wanted to bring light back into our home. I looked down at the Bible trembling in my hands. For years after Amina's death, our apartment had felt heavy with sadness. But now something felt different. Not perfect, not easy, but different. That same week, another unexpected thing happened. A trader at the market suddenly offered me a better business opportunity, helping him transport goods between cities. The pay was far more than I normally earned. Then another man connected me to someone needing workers regularly. For the first time in years, money started entering my hands steadily. Food became easier to buy. Rent became less frightening. Even Yusuf noticed. Baba, he said one afternoon while smiling over a full meal. Things are changing. And deep inside, I knew he was right. But the biggest change was not financial. It was spiritual. Because every day, the Jesus I once rejected was slowly becoming impossible for me to ignore. And one night, everything became even more real. I had a dream so powerful that when I woke up, I was shaking with tears.
So amazing viewers from around the world, as you are listening to this powerful miracle testimony, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to this channel. Also, comment where you are watching from. Let's pray for you and your city. Don't forget that whatever you may pass through, whatsoever you may face, that God can bless you. Drop your prayer points on the comment section. Let's pray for you and your city. Thank you for watching to this powerful miracle testimony. Continue and enjoy this video to the end.
The dream came on a Thursday night. I remember because rain had fallen heavily that evening, cooling the heat that normally filled our neighborhood. Yusuf had already gone to sleep after reading one of the Bible stories he had started loving so much. I still found it unbelievable sometimes. My son, the same boy who once stood beside me at the Kaaba, now sat in our small apartment asking questions about Jesus every night. And strangely, I no longer stopped him. That night, after Yusuf slept, I sat alone with the old Bible the beggar had given me. I opened again to the verses David had shown me before. Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. I read the words slowly until tears filled my eyes. For years I had carried grief, anger, confusion, and fear like heavy stones inside my chest. I had hidden my pain from everyone, even from myself sometimes. But now it felt as though someone truly saw me completely. Not my religion, not my appearance, not my struggles. Me. Eventually I fell asleep with the Bible still beside me. Then the dream began. I found myself standing in a dry, empty field under a dark sky. Everything around me looked lifeless. The ground was cracked. Trees were dead. Strong wind blew dust across the earth. And in the distance, I saw Amina. My heart nearly stopped. She stood wearing white clothing, smiling peacefully in a way I had not seen since before her sickness. I tried running toward her, but no matter how fast I moved, the distance between us remained the same. Amina, I shouted desperately, but then suddenly, a bright light appeared behind her. The light became stronger and stronger until it covered the entire field. And from inside the light, a voice spoke gently. Hassan, you have suffered long enough. I fell to my knees immediately. The voice continued, I did not abandon you in your pain. At that moment, I saw hands stretched toward me through the light. The same image Yusuf had described above the Kaaba. Then the voice spoke again. Follow me, and I will make your life a testimony to many. I woke up crying heavily. My body trembled. The room was dark except for moonlight entering through the window. Beside me, Yusuf was awake staring quietly at me. Baba! I covered my face with both hands. For several seconds I could not speak. Finally, with tears running freely, I whispered words I never imagined saying in my life. I think Jesus is calling me. Yusuf immediately hugged me tightly. And for the first time since Amina died, I cried openly in front of my son. Not from grief, but from release. The following weeks transformed my life completely. I continued meeting with David secretly to learn more about Jesus and the Bible. Every lesson felt like light entering places inside me that had been dark for years. One afternoon, David asked me something directly. Hassan, do you believe Jesus is truly speaking to you? I looked down quietly before answering. Yes. Then what is stopping you from following him fully? Fear. That was the truth. Fear of my community. Fear of rejection. Fear of losing relationships. Fear of what people would say. But one evening, while walking home from work, I passed a group of children fighting violently in the street. One boy could not have been older than 10. Yet he held a cigarette in his hand while insulting another child with terrible words. Suddenly Yusuf's message returned powerfully to my mind. The children of this generation are turning away. At that moment I understood something clearly. Jesus had not spoken to my son only for our family. The message was for many people. That night, I gathered courage and prayed differently than ever before. Not formal prayers, not memorized words, just honesty. Jesus, if you are truly calling me, then help me follow you completely. Peace flooded my heart immediately. Deep, powerful peace. Days later, David invited me to a small Christian gathering outside the city. I was nervous, but I went quietly. There, I heard testimonies from people whose lives had been transformed by Jesus. Former addicts, criminals, broken families, hopeless people who found peace. And suddenly I realized, I was not alone. When they prayed for me, something happened inside me that I cannot fully explain. It felt as though years of heaviness lifted from my soul. That day I surrendered my life to Jesus Christ. And from that moment forward, everything began changing. The transportation business I started grew rapidly. More opportunities came unexpectedly. Men who once ignored me now trusted me with important work. Within a year, I moved Yusuf and myself into a better apartment. For the first time in years, we lived without fear of hunger. But the greatest blessing was not money. It was purpose. I began sharing publicly what happened to Yusuf in Mecca. At first only a few people listened. Some mocked me, others became angry, but many were touched deeply, especially parents. I spoke everywhere I was invited. Protect your children. Teach them about God. The world is pulling this generation into darkness. And every time I shared the words Jesus spoke to my son, silence would fill the room, because people knew it was true. Children were changing. Families were breaking. Morality was disappearing. Yet hope still remained. One afternoon after speaking in a nearby city, a woman approached me crying. She held her young son tightly. Your testimony saved my child, she said through tears. I was losing him to drugs and bad friends. But after hearing your story, we started praying together again. That moment broke me emotionally. I finally understood why Jesus had chosen to speak through a child. Because children still reach hearts adults ignore. Today, Yusuf is older now, but he still remembers everything clearly. Sometimes people ask him, were you afraid when you saw Jesus above the Kaaba? He always smiles before answering. No, I felt loved. As for me, I no longer live with the emptiness that once consumed my life. Jesus did not only change me spiritually, he restored my hope. He restored my purpose. And somehow, through all of it, he even restored joy to our home again. Sometimes late at night, I sit quietly remembering the frightened man I once was. The poor widowed father who thought his life had ended after losing his wife. I had no idea heaven was preparing a new beginning. And it all started with a little boy looking up at the sky above the Kaaba and hearing a voice say, let the young children come to me.
Alright, amazing viewers from around the world. Thank you for listening to this testimony to the end. Have you seen that whatsoever you may face, whatsoever you may be passing through, God is willing to bless you and is willing to help you and see you through. So far you don't give up in him. So far you don't turn back in him. Don't forget to continue subscribing to this channel for more powerful miracle testimony like this. Thank you and may God bless you.